Have you ever noticed how quickly your inner peace can be shattered by the arrival of someone else's light? What if the sudden anxiety you feel around a talented new colleague is not a sign of your inadequacy, but a false story your mind has been quietly telling you for years? If you have ever sat in a room, watched someone else shine, and felt a cold, sinking fear that you are no longer enough, this is for you. Stay until the end, because the final lesson may change the way you see your own worth forever. Section 1. The sting of comparison. Here is a truth few people want to face. We often build our entire sense of self-worth on the fragile foundation of being the most impressive person in the room. You work hard, you earn your place, you feel safe in your competence, you know your role, and you take comfort in the subtle validation of being needed, of being the one people turn to. And then, it happens. A new person arrives. They are sharp. They are undeniably talented. They speak with ease. They solve problems quickly, and praise seems to flow toward them effortlessly. Suddenly, your chest tightens. A quiet, vicious voice whispers that you are falling behind, that you are becoming invisible, that their success is somehow the beginning of your erasure. You begin to overthink every email, every conversation, every meeting. You watch them closely, not with admiration, but with a heavy, exhausting sense of threat. Buddhist wisdom teaches that much of our suffering comes from attachment. But this does not just mean attachment to physical things or to other people. The deepest suffering comes from attachment to an identity. You have attached your value to a temporary position, the role of being the best, the smartest, or the most reliable. When that role is challenged, it feels as though your very survival is at stake. But the pain you are feeling is not caused by the new colleague. It is caused by how tightly you are clinging to an image of yourself that was never meant to be permanent. Imagine a single candle burning brightly in a quiet, dark room. For hours, it provides all the light. It is essential. It is the center of the room. Then morning comes. The curtains are pulled back, and the bright morning sun floods the space. The candle does not stop burning. Its flame is just as warm, just as real, and just as present. But if that candle had a mind, it might look at the sun and feel entirely worthless. It might forget its own warmth simply because the room is now brighter. We do exactly this in our everyday lives. You sit at your desk, watching this new colleague deliver brilliant ideas, and you immediately shrink. You compare your silent struggles to their public victories. You forget the years of quiet, steady value you have provided because you are so focused on their immediate sunlight. Ask yourself, why does their capability feel like your failure? What are you afraid will happen if you let go of the need to be the only star in the sky? Stop, breathe. Observe the thought without following it. When that knot of jealousy and fear rises in your stomach, do not fight it, but do not believe it either. Let the feeling rise without making it your identity. You do not have to chase after a title or force a performance just to prove you still matter. You do not have to compete with someone just because they are shining. Because peace is not found in always being the brightest light. It is found in realizing that your light is never diminished by the presence of another. But letting go of the need to be the best is deeply uncomfortable. It forces us to confront an illusion we have believed for a very long time. And this is where the next truth begins. What if your desire to always be the most impressive person in the room is actually a trap you built for yourself? Here is the truth. The crown of being the best is a heavy, fragile thing, and the moment you put it on, you invite anxiety into your life. The mind convinces us that if we can just stay on top, if we can remain the most accomplished or the most praised, we will finally be safe. But this safety is a ghost. Think about your own life. When you occupy the space of being the most talented person in your circle, you are constantly on guard. You cannot afford to make a mistake. You cannot afford to say, "I don't know." Every project becomes a high-stakes trial, and every interaction becomes a test of your status. When a new, highly capable colleague enters the picture, they aren't just a person doing a job. They are a threat to your carefully guarded safety. Your mind treats their talent as an active assault on your security. In Buddhist thought, we are reminded of the concept of impermanence. Nothing stays the same. The tides change, the seasons turn, and human capabilities naturally peak and shift. Trying to remain the permanent peak of an environment is like trying to command a wave to stop crashing. It is a battle against the natural order of reality. The suffering you feel right now is the friction between your desire for permanent status and the reality of an ever-changing world. Imagine a towering mountain peak, standing proud above all the others, catching the very first rays of the sun. It seems grand, unshakable, and superior. But because it is the highest point, it also takes the full force of the howling wind. It catches the lightning. It suffers the bitterest cold and the harshest storms. Meanwhile, the valley below remains quiet, protected, and fertile, filled with life and water. The mountain peak sacrifices peace just to be high up. In our modern workplaces and social lives, we constantly strive to be that mountain peak. We want the view, the status, and the recognition, but we forget the exhaustion that comes with standing in the wind. When you feel threatened by a talented newcomer, you are desperately trying to fortify a peak that was never meant to be yours forever. You look at their success and feel a sense of lack, forgetting that your worth was never supposed to be measured by your height relative to someone else. Ask yourself, is your current anxiety bringing you peace, or is it feeding your fear of being ordinary? What would happen if you allowed yourself to step down from the peak and just be part of the landscape? Pause, breathe. Look at the talented new person, not as an adversary, but as a fellow traveler. When they speak well in a meeting, notice the urge to criticize them in your mind. Catch the thought that tries to find a flaw in their delivery or a mistake in their logic, just to make yourself feel bigger. Stop trying to force the door of superiority open. Let them be capable. Let them be brilliant. Their brilliance does not make you a failure. It simply means there are now two capable people where there used to be one. You do not need to carry the burden of being unmatched. There is an incredible, profound freedom in realizing you do not have to be the most impressive person in the room to be valuable. Once you stop defending the illusion of being the best, you can finally start doing your best work. But releasing this defense requires us to look at exactly why we feel the need to prove ourselves in the first place. Section 3. The heavy burden of proving yourself. What if the exhaustion you feel at the end of the day has nothing to do with your workload and everything to do with the invisible armor you refuse to take off? Here is the truth few people want to face. The moment we feel threatened by someone else's brilliance, an old, exhausting survival instinct kicks in. You suddenly feel like your past efforts have been erased. You start staying late, over-polishing your work, and forcing your way into conversations. You agonize over the tone of a simple email, making sure it sounds just smart enough, just authoritative enough. You are no longer working to contribute. You are working to perform. Every action, every spoken word in a meeting becomes a desperate, quiet plea. I am still valuable. Do not forget me. Buddhist wisdom teaches that the ego is a relentless master. It is constantly hungry, always demanding to be fed with praise, recognition, and proof of its own importance. When we attach our identity to our achievements, we believe our worth must be earned anew every single morning. We become trapped in a cycle of endless doing, terrified that if we stop proving ourselves, we will cease to matter. But Buddhism reminds us that your true essence does not need to be proven. It simply is. The desperate need to constantly justify your place in the world is a heavy, unnecessary suffering. Imagine a bird that has lived its entire life trapped inside a small cage. Every day, it flies in frantic circles, bumping against the metal bars, exhausting its wings just to manage the confined space. One morning, the door to the cage is opened. The sky is right there, wide and endless, but the bird does not leave. It continues to fly in frantic, exhausting circles inside the cage because it has forgotten how to rest. It believes the struggle is the only way to exist. In our daily lives, we become that bird. You see the new colleague effortlessly succeeding, and your mind convinces you that the cage door is closing on your career, your reputation, or your social standing. So, you flap your wings harder. You exhaust yourself trying to outpace someone who may not even know they are in a race with you. You carry the heavy burden of proving your worth, dragging it into every interaction, treating every ordinary workday like a battlefield. Ask yourself, whose voice is actually demanding this relentless performance? Think about your own life. What are you truly afraid will happen if you simply do your job well, and let that be enough? Is this endless need to prove yourself bringing you peace or feeding your fear? Pause, breathe. Notice the moment the urge to prove yourself arises. When you sit in a meeting and feel that sudden, desperate spike of anxiety urging you to speak up just to sound smart, stop. Let the feeling rise without making it your identity. You do not have to perform for your right to exist in that room. Do your part, then release the outcome. Give yourself permission to do good work quietly, because peace is not found in convincing everyone around you of your value. It is found when you no longer need them to applaud you to know your own worth. True confidence does not need to announce itself, but when we finally put down the heavy armor of proving ourselves, we are left standing in silence. And in that silence, we are forced to look at something much more uncomfortable. And this is where the next truth begins. Because beneath every reaction to another person's success is a mirror, waiting to show us our own deepest fears. Have you ever noticed that what bothers us most about others is usually a reflection of what we fear most within ourselves? Here is the uncomfortable truth. The talented new colleague is not your enemy. They are a mirror. When we feel threatened by someone else's brilliance, our immediate instinct is to look outward. We analyze them. We watch their every move. We quietly wait for them to make a mistake, hoping their failure will somehow restore our own sense of security. If they speak up in a meeting, we call them arrogant in our minds. If they succeed, we tell ourselves they just got lucky. We build walls of silent resentment, convincing ourselves that they are doing something wrong by shining so brightly. But Buddhist wisdom offers a very different perspective on this pain. Buddhism reminds us that our intense emotional reactions are rarely about the person standing in front of us. They are about our own internal attachments. When a feeling of intense jealousy or threat arises, it is a sign pointing directly toward a place inside you that feels unloved, unseen, or insecure. The colleague is simply acting as a mirror, reflecting your own deeply buried fear that you are not enough. Imagine a still lake at midnight, perfectly reflecting a bright full moon. The reflection is clear, peaceful, and whole. But if a heavy storm rolls in and the wind whips the water into violent waves, the reflection of the moon becomes shattered, distorted, and chaotic. If you were looking only at the water, you might believe the moon itself had broken. But the moon has not changed at all. It is only the water that is agitated. In the workplace, when you see a capable person and feel a sudden surge of anxiety or bitterness, they are simply the moon. Your mind is the troubled water. You look at their natural ability, and because your own mind is turbulent with the fear of being replaced or forgotten, you perceive them as a threat. You distort their existence into an attack on your own. You think they are trying to outshine you. when in reality, they are just doing their job, completely unaware of the storm they have accidentally revealed inside you. Ask yourself, what is this person actually triggering in you? Are they truly doing something wrong, or are they simply touching an old wound of yours? What are you still holding on to that makes their success feel like your failure? Pause. Breathe. The next time you feel that hot sting of resentment when they receive praise, do not look at them. Look inward. Notice the thoughts spinning in your mind. Let the feeling rise without making it your identity. Instead of looking for a flaw in their work, look for the fear in your own heart. Acknowledge it gently. Tell yourself quietly, I am feeling afraid of being invisible. Once you name the fear, it begins to lose its power over you. Because peace is not found by breaking the mirror, it is found by calming the water. You do not have to fight the reflection. You just have to sit with yourself until the storm passes. But calming the water is only the first step. Once we stop fighting the reflection, we are faced with a profound opportunity to completely change how we experience the success of others. And this is where the next truth begins. Section 5. The practice of sympathetic joy. What if you could borrow the joy of another person's success instead of letting it steal your peace? Here is a truth that goes against everything the modern, competitive world teaches us. Success is not a limited resource. Yet, we are conditioned to view life as a desperate race with only one winner. When we see a new colleague thriving, our minds immediately treat it as a loss for ourselves. If they receive praise, we feel there is less praise available for us. If they are recognized, we feel pushed into the shadows. We sit in meetings with a tight chest, forcing a polite smile while secretly hoping their next idea is just a little less brilliant, so we can finally breathe easy again. Buddhist wisdom teaches a profound concept known as mudita, or sympathetic joy. It is the ability to find genuine happiness in the success and good fortune of others. In Buddhist thought, envy is seen as a heavy chain that binds us to suffering, while sympathetic joy is the key that unlocks it. This is not about forcing fake positivity or pretending you are not hurting. It is a deep, internal shift. It is the realization that another person's light does not cast a shadow on your worth. Imagine a large, cold room filled with hundreds of unlit candles. Suddenly, one candle is lit. It begins to glow brightly, bringing warmth to its small corner. But what if the other candles look at that single flame with bitter resentment, choosing to stay cold and dark out of pride? They remain frozen, wishing the flame would go out so they all look the same again. Now imagine if, instead, they lean in, they touch their wicks to the flame. Suddenly, the entire room is ablaze with light, and the original flame has not lost a single spark of its fire. The light was not divided, it was multiplied. In our daily lives, we too often choose to be the resentful candles. When the talented new colleague delivers a brilliant presentation or solves a difficult problem, we cross our arms. We stay cold. We believe that celebrating them means admitting our own defeat. We fail to see that their talent can elevate the entire team, the entire project, and even our own experience of the work. By resisting their light out of fear, we keep ourselves sitting in the dark. Ask yourself, does diminishing their success in your mind actually make you feel any better? Think about your own life. Is this silent rivalry bringing you peace, or is it slowly exhausting your spirit? What would change if you decided to celebrate the very thing you are currently afraid of? Pause. Breathe. The next time they do something genuinely impressive, try something radical. Step toward the light. Offer a quiet, sincere compliment. Say, "That was a great idea." Notice the initial resistance in your mind, but do not follow it. Let the feeling of generosity rise within you. Stop trying to protect a fragile ego and start participating in the shared warmth of good work. Because peace is not found in hoarding success or guarding your status. It is found in realizing that another person's victory can become your joy too, if you simply open your hands to receive it. But practicing genuine joy for someone else is nearly impossible if you still believe that your own fundamental value depends on how much you accomplish. And this is where the next truth begins. What if the deepest lie you were ever told is that you are only as valuable as what you can produce today? Here is the truth few people want to face. We have learned a dangerous, exhausting habit. We measure our entire human worth by our daily output. We treat ourselves like machines. If we generate the best ideas, handle the heaviest workload, or receive the loudest applause, we feel worthy of taking up space. But when a talented new colleague arrives and effortlessly outpaces our production, our foundation crumbles. You watch them deliver stunning presentations or quickly resolve complex issues, and suddenly you feel useless. You are not just worried about your position, you are mourning your value. You believe that if you are not producing the most, you are nothing at all. Buddhist wisdom teaches a powerful lesson about inherent worth. In Buddhist thought, your value is not a commodity that fluctuates with the market of human opinion or daily productivity. You possess a fundamental dignity, a quiet, unshakable inner nature that remains completely untouched by your successes or your failures. One of the deepest lessons of Buddhism is that attachment to the fruits of your labor causes suffering, because the amount of fruit you produce will always change. When you believe you are only your output, you become a prisoner to constant, frantic action. Imagine a strong, ancient apple tree standing in a quiet field. In the middle of summer, its branches are heavy with bright fruit. People gather around it, marveling at its abundance. But eventually, the seasons change. Winter arrives. The leaves fall, and the branches become completely bare. There is no fruit left to give. Yet, the tree does not apologize for its bare branches. It does not feel ashamed. It does not look at the evergreen trees nearby and feel inferior. It stands just as tall, resting in the deep stillness of its roots, knowing its worth is not gone simply because it is in a different season. In our daily lives, we rarely allow ourselves a winter. We expect to be in full, glorious bloom every single day. When the new colleague walks in, bursting with summer energy and fresh ideas, you look at your own quieter season and panic. You forget the deep roots you have built over the years. You forget the steady reliability, the silent wisdom, and the quiet strength you bring to the room. You try to force yourself to blossom out of season, exhausting your spirit, when what you really need is to simply stand grounded. Ask yourself, who taught you that your existence must constantly be justified by what you achieve? Think about your own life. Are you treating yourself as a living, breathing human being, or as a machine terrified of becoming obsolete? Is this endless comparison bringing you peace or feeding your fear? Pause, breathe. Catch your mind the next time it tries to turn a quiet day into a crisis of self-worth. Observe the thought without following it. Do your work with care, then release the outcome. You do not need to constantly harvest praise to prove you have a right to be here. Let your work simply be your work. It is not your soul. Because peace is not something you earn by being the most productive person in the room. It is something you make space for when you finally realize you are already enough, exactly as you are. But holding on to that realization in a loud, competitive room requires a mind that is steady enough not to be swept away. And this is where the next truth begins. Section 7. The strength of the quiet mind. What if true confidence is not found in having the loudest voice, but in possessing the quietest mind? Here is the truth. We are conditioned to believe that presence requires noise. When the talented new colleague takes the floor in a meeting, speaking brilliantly and moving quickly, An uncomfortable panic sets in. The silence suddenly feels like weakness. You feel an overwhelming urge to jump into the conversation, to add a point, to disagree, or to offer a solution, just to prove you are still there. Your mind begins to race. You are no longer listening to what they are saying. You are frantically loading a weapon, waiting for a pause so you can fire off a comment that proves your intelligence. In this state, every interaction becomes a noisy, exhausting battle of intellects. Buddhist wisdom teaches the profound power of the observing mind. In Buddhist thought, true strength is not found in how quickly you can react, but in your ability to sit quietly with the urge to react and choose not to. The ego demands noise. It demands to be seen and heard constantly to feel secure. But mindfulness teaches us the power of the pause, the sacred space between an event and your reaction to it. You do not have to answer every thought your mind produces. You do not have to fight every battle your ego creates. Imagine the vast, open ocean during a violent storm. On the surface, the water is chaotic. Huge waves crash into each other. The wind howls, and everything is frantically tossed around. This is the anxious mind, reacting to every perceived threat. But if you dive just 50 feet below that chaotic surface, everything changes. The water is utterly still. It is silent. The deep ocean is completely undisturbed by the frantic, noisy activity happening above it. It does not need to crash and roar to prove it is powerful. Its strength is in its quiet depth. In our everyday workspaces, we spend entirely too much time fighting on the surface. You sit at the table, your heart beating fast, terrified that the new colleague's rapid ideas are drowning you out. You feel the wind and the crashing waves of comparison, but you do not have to live on the surface. You can choose to drop into the deep water. You can sit back, relax your shoulders, and simply listen. You can allow them to be brilliant without feeling the desperate need to instantly match their energy or counter their point. Ask yourself, when you feel the desperate urge to speak up, are you speaking to add value, or are you speaking just to be seen? Think about your own life. What are you afraid the silence will say about you? Is your mind racing to solve the problem, or is it just racing to defend your fragile ego? Pause. Breathe. The next time you feel that hot panic urging you to speak and prove your worth, just wait. Let the urge rise and fall like a wave on the surface. Observe the frantic energy in your chest without becoming it. Listen completely to the other person without secretly formulating your reply. Let the silence be okay. You do not need to make noise to be present, because peace is not about shouting louder than the storm. It is about resting in the deep water where the storm cannot reach you. But when you finally find this quiet stillness and you stop seeing the other person as an opponent, you will notice something beautiful begins to happen between you. And this is where the next truth begins. Section 8. The river of collaborative flow. What if the energy you spend fighting the current could be used to carry you forward? Here is a truth that goes against our deepest survival instincts. We are conditioned to view our daily lives, and especially our work, as a solo journey. We treat our knowledge, our experience, and our territory as resources that must be fiercely protected. When a highly talented colleague arrives, we immediately try to dig a trench around our position. We withhold information. We push back against their ideas. We try to paddle faster and swim harder, exhausting ourselves simply to prove that we do not need their help, and they do not need to be here. Buddhist wisdom teaches the beautiful concept of interconnectedness. In Buddhist thought, the idea that we are entirely separate, isolated beings fighting against the rest of the world is an illusion, and it is the root of profound suffering. We hurt ourselves when we build walls to protect our ego. We believe that to let someone else in is to lose a piece of ourselves. But Buddhism reminds us that nothing exists entirely on its own. When we finally stop clinging to the illusion of our own rigid separateness, we realize we do not have to fight the energy of others. We can join it. Imagine two small separate streams flowing down a rocky mountain. Because they are separate, they are shallow. They struggle against the boulders, moving slowly, constantly fighting the obstacles in their path. But eventually, the terrain shifts, and the two streams meet. They do not fight each other. One does not try to overpower or erase the other. Instead, they merge. Together, they become a wide, deep river, flowing powerfully toward the ocean. The river is far stronger than the streams ever were, easily moving past the rocks that once held them back. In our everyday lives, we spend too much time trying to be a solitary stream. You sit at your desk, treating the capable new colleague as an obstacle to push against. But what if you stopped resisting? What if their quick, brilliant ideas and your deep, steady, historical knowledge were never meant to compete? When you drop the heavy armor of comparison, you realize their strengths do not expose your weaknesses. They complete them. You can blend your steady experience with their fresh energy. You stop defending a tiny, isolated territory and begin moving smoothly together toward a shared goal. Ask yourself, how much of your daily exhaustion comes from trying to carve a separate path just to prove you can? Think about your own life. What are you afraid you will lose if you actually let this person help you? Is your resistance bringing you peace? Or is it just keeping you shallow and stuck? Pause. Breathe. The next time they bring a brilliant idea to the table, do not look for its flaws. Look for the bridge. Instead of saying but, try saying yes and. Let the feeling of teamwork rise without feeling like you are giving up your power. Stop trying to force the stream to flow entirely on your terms. Let their momentum support your own. Because peace is not found in fighting alone against the rocks. It is found in surrendering to a shared flow. But even as you learn to merge your energy with others, there is one final anchor you must drop to ensure you are never swept away by comparison again. And this is where the final truth begins. What if the only thing you ever needed to protect was not your status, but your inner peace? Think back to the beginning of this journey. Remember that cold, sinking fear of sitting in a room, watching a talented colleague shine, and feeling the quiet panic that you were no longer enough. You spent so much energy trying to guard your position. You exhausted yourself trying to prove your worth, fighting a silent, desperate battle they did not even know was happening. You thought their light was the threat, but the real threat was never them. The threat was the heavy, exhausting story you were telling yourself, the illusion that you had to be the most impressive person in the room to deserve your place in it. Buddhist wisdom teaches us that true freedom is found in the complete release of these false stories. You do not suffer because you are inadequate. You suffer because you have tied your entire sense of self to something that is guaranteed to change your temporary ranking in the eyes of others. When you finally practice non-attachment to your status, you do not become invisible, you become unshakable. You step off the exhausting treadmill of comparison and step into the quiet power of your own inherent dignity. Imagine a deeply rooted tree in the middle of a vast, ancient forest. When a new, magnificent tree grows nearby, reaching high into the sky, the older tree does not shrink. It does not pull its roots away in fear. It does not try to stretch its branches frantically to block the other's sun. It simply remains exactly what it is. It trusts its own deep roots. It knows the soil is rich enough for both of them to thrive. It understands that the profound beauty of the forest comes from the presence of many strong trees, not just one. In your life, you must become that deeply rooted tree. Your years of quiet effort, your steady reliability, your unique mind, and your silent wisdom, these are your roots. They cannot be erased by someone else's sudden arrival. You do not need to stretch frantically for validation. You do not need to be the brightest, the fastest, or the most praised person in the room to have a fundamental right to stand there. The journey to deep inner peace begins the moment you stop competing for your own existence. You can let the talented new colleague be brilliant. You can let the room be filled with highly capable people. You can take off the heavy armor of constant performance. When you separate your worth from your output, when you find sympathetic joy, and when you stop seeing the brilliance of others as a threat, you finally reclaim your mind. Ask yourself, are you ready to stop fighting? Pause. Breathe. The next time you walk into that room, walk in with empty hands. Stop trying to force the world to validate you. Do your work with simple care. Celebrate the light in others without ever diminishing your own. Trust the depth of your own roots, and let the storm of comparison pass you by entirely. If these lessons touched your heart, share this video with someone who may need a little more peace today. You can let go now.